This is the news in brief from the United Nations. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has welcomed the departure on Monday of the first ship transporting grain from Ukraine to the rest of the world, in line with the landmark UN-brokered agreement signed by the country, Russia and Turkey. The cargo ship Razoni left Odessa with more than 26,000 tons of corn, the first commercial vessel to leave a Ukrainian Black Sea port since the 26th of February, or just days after the start of the Russian invasion. The ship is bound for the Mediterranean port of Tripoli in Lebanon. The UN chief said ensuring existing grain and foodstuffs can move to global markets is a humanitarian imperative, according to a statement issued by his spokesperson. He hoped this will be the first of many commercial ships moving in accordance with the agreement, and that this will bring much-needed stability and relief to global food security, especially in the most fragile humanitarian situations. At a time of nuclear danger not seen since the height of the Cold War, countries must urgently reinforce the nearly 80-year-old norm against the use of nuclear weapons, the UN Secretary-General said in New York on Monday. Mr. Guterres was addressing the opening of the latest meeting to review progress on implementing the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, being held at UN headquarters through the 26th of August. He said it is taking place at a critical juncture with the climate crisis, stark inequalities, conflicts, the COVID-19 pandemic, and other challenges putting the world under great stress. With geopolitical tensions reaching new highs and countries spending billions on doomsday weapons, the UN chief warned that humanity is just one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation.
We need the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons as much as ever. And that is why this review conference is so important. It's an opportunity to hammer out the measures that will help avoid certain disaster and to put humanity on a new path towards a world free of nuclear weapons. It is also a chance to strengthen this treaty and make it fit for the warring world around us.
Governments must allocate greater resources to protect, promote, and support breastfeeding policies and programs, particularly in emergency settings. That's the message from the heads of the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, and the World Health Organization, WHO, in a statement on Monday to mark the start of World Breastfeeding Week. They said during emergencies, such as the situations in Afghanistan, Yemen, Ukraine, and the Horn of Africa, breastfeeding guarantees a safe, nutritious, and accessible food source for babies and young children. However, factors that affect mothers in crisis settings, including emotional distress, exhaustion, as well as lack of space and privacy, means that their babies often miss out on the benefits of breastfeeding. The UN agencies are calling for measures that include prioritizing investment in breastfeeding in fragile contexts and equipping health workers with the necessary skills to provide quality counseling and practical support to mothers so they can successfully breastfeed. Deanne Penn, UN News.
This is the news in brief from the United Nations. The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, says that it's been forced to cut vital programs for the Democratic Republic of the Congo because of insufficient funding. The cuts will have a significant impact on the lives of over 500,000 refugees and asylum seekers and more than 5.6 million internally displaced people, warned Dominique Hyde, director of UNHCR's Division for External Relations. DRC is currently the most underfunded of the UNHCR's operations worldwide. Since the 30th of June, only 19% of the $225 million budgeted for at the start of the year has been secured. This means that 82% of the country's internally displaced people will not receive adequate shelter. UNHCR also cannot help to send a single refugee child to secondary school this year. Ms. Hyde said we should all be angry. The inability to respond, to provide against the toxic cocktail of conflict, climate shock, COVID-19, the war in Ukraine and rising food prices. A warning now from the World Health Organization that the Greater Horn of Africa is experiencing one of the worst food insecurity situations in the last 70 years. More than 37 million people, including 7 million children under the age of 5, face acute hunger in the region. While finding food and safe water is the top priority, WHO has reiterated that responding to health needs is essential to avert preventable disease and death. WHO appealed for $123.7 million to respond to the rising health needs and prevent a food crisis from turning into a health crisis. The situation is already catastrophic and we need to act now, said WHO's Assistant Director General for Emergencies Response, Ibrahima Sosei Fall. We cannot continue in this underfunding crisis. WHO Incident Manager Sophie Mays said that the situation is deteriorating because of climate change, conflict, rising food prices and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, compounding one of the worst droughts in recent decades.
There are now 4 seasons where the rain didn't come as predicted, and a 5th season is estimated to also fail. Places where there is drought, the problem keeps on worsening and worsening and worsening, and we're looking at something that is going to go worse in the near future.
UN-appointed independent human rights experts spoke out on Tuesday against Israel's alleged harassment of human rights defenders and humanitarian workers in the occupied West Bank hamlets of Masafa Yatta. The experts also denounced the threats of mass forced evictions and arbitrary displacement of communities there. In May, the Israeli High Court of Justice rejected appeals against eviction orders of Palestinians in Masafa Yatta. Since then, dozens of families have been left homeless without warning as Israeli authorities issued more demolition orders and established military checkpoints. Reports that human rights defenders and humanitarian workers have been harassed by the Israeli military in Masafa Yatta were a direct assault on the core of human rights, the experts said. They pointed to the case of protester Sami Huraini as being of particular concern after his reported arrest in June. He's being tried for allegedly obstructing and assaulting a soldier and entering a closed military zone in January 2021, despite a lack of physical evidence substantiating the allegations, the experts said. Katie Dartford, UN News.